Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rocket Recap for the week of July 30th. My name is Bass in the Past, and joined alongside me as he pops on screen right now is Hyferia. Hype, welcome, my friend. It's been over a month since you and I got to do this. We're going to change up the format just a little bit here today. More going to be a podcast discussing some of the topics that you and I enjoy. Obviously, we're live right now on Twitch if you guys want to go and check that out, twitch.tv/BassFromThePast for future episodes. But you're most likely viewing this on YouTube. So we're going to get right into this one, get the recording underway. Hype, we're going to start off with North America here today because, well, we've been gone a month. A lot has happened in North America since then.
It is absolutely ridiculous. The amount of scenes that have been happening in this off-season of RLCS, there's a lot that went on, and I'm incredibly excited to talk about it all. But let's start with the roster movements, which have been a lot calmer in NA, to be fair, in comparison to EU. There's not been that much. So let's start us off. Percy to Exa. You already saw this coming, didn't you?
Yeah, we talked about this about a month ago. We saw this with Percy leaving Alpine, and I think that this was kind of his... I feel like it's wrong to say his only move because of the fact that, I mean, obviously, you know, Alpine was a really good team, but it didn't feel like there were many other teams right now that were looking for a third, like, publicly. Obviously, XSET drops Alpha Kep. They're looking for a third. This just feels like a lateral move, though. I feel like I could be wrong in saying this, but it does not feel like Percy really did much in terms of moving up and down. When he left Alpine, I kind of imagined it was because he wanted to go to, like, a big team with a bigger shot, but I feel like him going to XSET is just kind of more to the same. Another middle-of-the-pack RLCS team that is good, but it's not, you know, it's not Rogue, it's not SG, it's not NRG, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of people were saying as well that he was going to go to G2, I'm pretty sure, where all of a sudden that just turned into a pipe dream, I guess, and he didn't end up getting it. I hope for him that he does at some point end up move up again. I'm a little bit confused, though, about Exa in general. They've had stellar results above anyone's expectations. And then they decide to switch up the roster, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. When you're doing well, you do not want to switch up your roster.
Especially for XSET. XSET's a team that, like, I feel like this is pretty obvious if you've been watching XSET over the last probably year or so, but they're a team that has just been good together. They started off okay, they started getting better, and then they've just had success from the fact that they're one of the longest running rosters in Rocket League, if I'm not mistaken, or at least they were before all of this broke down. I'll go check out their page right now, but yeah, initially the beginning of XSET was 2020. It was July 27th, 3 days ago from today, about a year ago, is when they first started all of this up. Hawkster joins on, I believe it's October 21st, and let's see, who did... It was Alpha Kep joined also on the 27th, 3 days ago. So technically, XSET was formed about a year ago today. They brought on Hawkster in October, and since then they had been that trio. And that's what makes this all the more confusing, is that a trio that had been working together for, let's call it almost a year. Alpha Kep left on June 1st of this year. Why they would take a winning formula and just kind of throw it out the window, I genuinely am very confused by this move. I was confused when it started up and we started to see the rosters, but I'm even more confused now, considering that it looks like they kind of just took, like, I don't know, man. It feels like they just kind of took another player similar to Alpha Kep and put him in. I know that Percy and Alpha Kep are not the same, but when I look at, like, level of talent, I just don't feel like this was an upgrade for either team. This feels like a lateral move altogether, you know?
Yeah, it's a little bit odd. It's a little bit odd for sure. But, well, Alpha Kep on the other side, he has moved up, I want to say.
Yep.
He went to PK, and that's just, well, if you're going to be dropped randomly by your team, move up the ladder and show them wrong. Alpha Kep, oh my word, he's going to be exciting me to show what he can bring. I always love this kind of moment where it's... yeah, somebody gets dropped and then they make a massive comeback curve. I really want to see him do well. I wish him the absolute best in the next season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Alpha Kep's just a really good player. I think he's a good figure in the community. He's done a lot of, I mean, he's a huge streamer, so he does this constantly. And like you said, PK could actually be a move upwards. PK has had a pretty up and down season. Certain times they are one of the best teams in NA, and certain times they are one of the worst teams in NA. It's a kind of an unfortunate in between. But that being said, I definitely see a lot of upside to this team. Sosa and Rodoko are both very good players, and I think Alpha Kep might actually be that piece of that puzzle that they're kind of looking for, because it did kind of feel like PK were not really, is the right word functioning with ZPS? Because they weren't doing bad with ZPS. It didn't feel like they were meshing well, you know?
Yeah, it always feels a little bit odd sometimes. And ZPS, I've not really heard from him. He might have even retired or at least taken a little bit of a break. Yeah, you always see that in a roster where it just doesn't really run that smoothly. It's a little bit unfortunate to be seeing, but hey, I think next RLCS season, or rather upcoming RLCS season, we're going to see a lot of new players in there, and the older people in Rocket League, the ground setters really, are going to be going towards a cliff slowly but surely.
Yeah, I think that there's kind of the truth is that the new wave is starting to appear here. You and I have talked about a plethora of different players that we've had our eyes on, and as you guys can see to that side of the screen, can't even point at it because I'm getting cut off over there. As you guys can see, we at the end of this, we're going to do some prospects, talking about some of the teams that we think are going to do well in the upcoming season, some of the players we think are going to do well that, you know, you guys might not necessarily have had your eyes on, although I know my audience is a lot of bubble players, so they might have some people that they do recognize. But that we're going to save that for a little while down the road. For right now, again, still talking more about these North American transfers, North American tournaments that have been going on. I will bring up one tournament I think that we kind of have to, you know, we have to mention at some point here, is we've got to mention that DreamHack is going on right now. DreamHack is happening for both North America and EU, so I don't think it's necessarily fair for me to bring it up here in the Americas, but I mean, we do have to talk about it at some point. DreamHack found their way back into Rocket League. It has been a very long time since we saw Rocket League and DreamHack together here, and I think the last time I can remember was 2 years ago for the LAN that Pittsburgh won. Right? Is that the last one? I'm trying to think.
You're dropping a lot of knowledge on me there, and having a lot of expectations on me knowing exactly when DreamHack was the last in Rocket League. But I'm at least very glad. More tournament organizers obviously means more money into Rocket League, means more teams, means overall there's just more interest out of everybody. And also, what I'm really glad with is the people who cast it, mainly Jolly. I'm really glad that there is different representation and not only dudes in the cast, but also Jolly getting his shot. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think that this is something that the scene has talked about recently, in the diversity of casters, whether that people be people of color being able to cast, or also having female casters, just making sure that it's not all white dudes casting. And I know this comes from two white dudes saying this, but seriously, it's I mean, listen, man, at the end of the day, I can be self-aware and recognize that we definitely have, you know, there's a lot of people out there that don't look like you or I and don't always get the same sort of shots. So I agree with you. Being able to have Jolly hop in the booth for something like this is awesome. I'm also really, I think this is something that another cup we're going to talk about in a little while. I think we're going to save this more towards the end because IWO was, oh boy, the unfolding of IWO after the last time you and I spoke about it was quite something different than we had really anticipated. But that being said, I am happy for DreamHack that they actually made it where it was American casters on the American stuff and EU casters on the EU stuff. I feel like that's just, it fits well. I think it gives a good vibe to what you're doing. It makes it feel a lot more homely, and it makes it feel a lot more involved. So, you know, good on you. Good on you, DreamHack, for doing that. I know that you guys didn't stick to that entirely for North America for 2v2 because you did have a substitution at some point. Shout out to Simpson, by the way. Simpson, if you're watching, you know what you did, and I love you for it. But, like, still, nonetheless, it's one of these things where I think that this was a really well-done tournament. The fact that they had a 3v3, 2v2, 1v1, and a freestyle competition all built in is a lot of work. It's a lot of money being thrown around, and I think it's really cool to see, just overall.
You know, DreamHack, with the return in Rocket League, they're showing current tournament organizers how it's done. Organizers that have been in the scene very long. But this is just exactly what people want to see. You give everybody something of basically everything. The prize pool is very decent while everything is being split up, and I just love it in general. And obviously the teams, they just give everyone a shot. If you're a Phenomenal Ones player, you can just go on. But there is also a 3v3, another 3v3 tournament, and that is a Nerd Street Gamer going on with a lot of bubble teams I'm seeing. There's no real team that makes me think, oh my word, this is a very high level, very much RLCS continuous contender team, even though the prize pool in total is 10k. I'm a little bit confused by that.
I think it's probably the qualifiers. Unfortunately for North America, it feels very much like big rock Rocket League teams, when you talk about RLCS level teams, aren't as interested in playing in qualifiers or really anything that has to give them extra work to earn money. One of the biggest examples of that, we'll talk about this in a little while, is going to be the game time circuits that are going on. We've had 3 of them. This is the summer one coming up right now that's actually going on. You and I had the pleasure of just casting the 5th qualifier for that, and they're going all the way up to 8. And RLCS teams aren't as common there as you might think. And it's not necessarily to say that, like, they don't exist, but it is one of these things where RLCS teams are looking for some more surefire shots at money. So where I think we're going to start to see some RLCS teams in this NSG Summer Championship is going to be the last chance qualifier. That last chance qualifier is tonight, by the way. So if you are watching this right now, it's going to be on. Definitely go recommending checking out Nerd Street Gaming. If you're checking this on YouTube, go figure out who won. Sorry, I got nothing else for you. It's a little bit late at this point. Someone's going to have won it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's mostly bubble teams right now when you look at the people who have qualified for this event. The main teams that we're going to mention are going to be Slaughterhouse Esports, Heybro. Heybro is Eris, Daniel, and T. Carell this time. They always have some sort of variation there that is mind-blowingly good. Team EXE, Mirage, True Neutral. That's actually an RLCS team that I think we should mention in a little while. Stockton University, Okay, Sagundi's Sauce, which is Leeks, Mectos, and Mill. That's hilarious. I didn't know that was a team. Selling Bread, Midnight is I'm Dreaming, Empire Esports, Vibrance, and Organic Applesauce. Organic Applesauce is the one team here where I have not heard of any of their players or of who they are. That's going to be Slayer, Fear Classic, and Turbo. No, not Turbo that you're thinking of, TRBO. But yeah, I've never actually heard of a couple of these teams, but when you look at people like Sagundi's, like they're fine. Sagundi's is a team that we're very aware of. If you don't know who Meeks, Mectos, or Mill are, you should definitely do your research. It's huge. But this is going to be a great competition. For $10,000, it's something that the Rocket League scene has been waiting for a while. And considering the last 10K we had, this is a much better step up.
Oh, yeah, True Neutral, they have to perform here, though. They have to show themselves. There's honestly so much pressure on True Neutral. Since they moved to North America, and a lot of North American players are complaining about South American players being in their server, but right now, True Neutral, they just have to go. They just have to prove themselves and show y'all ain't nothing, and we in South America can very much bowl properly as well and just clap some kids, and I really would want to see that as well.
I mean, to be fair, they have proven this pretty much already. I do want to also reiterate that True Neutral has been around in North America for quite some time and has had the opportunity to play in multiple different tournaments at this point. One of the bigger ones, actually, before we get to this big one, I will mention the Game Time Circuit as well. Again, they have actually won a qualifier for that versus the Gentlemen and a couple other bigger teams, and they now have a chance to compete for $4,000 for that game time thing at the end of the month, which absolutely go and check out if you guys are interested in good North American Bubble and RLCS teams. But a bigger event that they won, which I think is something that, I mean, we really have got to speak about this, is going to be the Gamers Without Borders. Gamers Without Borders was a non-for-profit league or tournament that went down, I want to say about a week or two ago, and it was awesome. There's no two ways about it. The amount of money that was raised for charities, I want to say it was almost $1 million in charity prizes, plus also some money actually going to the teams as well. But True Neutral took that, and that is not taking that against, like we had said, bubble teams. No, this was against truly RLCS teams. Oxygen Esports, Charlotte Phoenix, Alpine Esports, Hyferia from South America also competed, XSET, RBG, Flashes of Brilliance, but the one team that came out on top was True Neutral. They made their way into North America, and they really have taken it by storm so far.
I saw that tournament pop by, the Gamers Without Borders, and I was completely baffled. I didn't know about it. I never heard of it, and all of a sudden it just showed up. I'm really glad, though, that just in general, everything in Rocket League right now, I watch with the scope of how does this look towards the outside world, and how does this help the community grow? Well, having charity wanting to get into Rocket League and see it worthwhile, it just shows that there are eyes on their game, and it will grow accordingly. It will grow properly, because, to be fair, Rocket League has been going downhill a little bit, and they did a statement recently that I think is just not a great statement, to be fair. They put out something along the lines of, "We've heard you, but we can't reveal anything."
Yeah, I mean, I think that the feedback from the community was positive upon the fact that, hey, thank you guys for at least communicating and saying something, but in terms of what the substance of what they said, I feel it was a little bit lackluster. I don't want to necessarily say, boo on you for Psyonix for giving us an update, because I think any sort of communication between Psyonix and the community is good, considering how infrequent their community or their communications have been previous to this. But I have to agree with you. I don't think that there really was much we learned from that. The truth of the matter is that basically their statement said, hey, listen, we've been busy as hell. We've got two different teams focusing on two different things. One focusing on pushing content for, items and promotional events, and then one focusing on updating the game. And listen, at the end of the day, we've heard this statement many times from many different teams going basically, hey, the reason you're not seeing new content is because that's not the division that is being pushed right now. We're focusing on other divisions. And I get that. I really, truly do. But I think that there needs to be a little bit more with Rocket League because, like you said, the free-to-play boom is gone. We have lost most of those players that joined last year from free-to-play and that exploded the player base again. Now we need to figure out a way to keep the people we've hooked and keep them for a very long time. And I think having communications like this is great. But when your communication basically just says, hey, we're adding voice chat, and that's about that, it's not really that great. I feel like there just needed to be at least a little bit more from that communication, because voice chat alone I don't think is enough to revolutionize Rocket League for a second time.
I feel like Psyonix are very picky and choosy with what feedback they actually see online, because there were a few pros that said, oh yeah, we need voice chat, that'd be so funny, ha ha ha, and then all of a sudden it gets implemented very shortly after. Obviously, I don't know whether there were actually plans to do this, but it very much feels to me that Psyonix see a relatively easy fix and then something to give to the community, even though there could be so many things, because pro players are also dropping off at an alarming rate. There are so many pros and semi-pros retiring.
Yeah, it's been a sad month for Rocket League. If you are a fan of the scene and you have been watching for the last couple of years, you're starting to see some familiar faces drop on out and no longer play. It is a bummer. There's just no two ways about it. It's just, I wish that this was a more viable game for people in the bubble scene. I think this is something that you and I have spoken about on many different occasions, but if you don't have a thriving bubble scene, you don't have a thriving pro scene. You need people that can take over for that pro scene, and they need to be financially supported enough that they can make this a career. And I think that that's a little bit of a difficulty we're seeing in Rocket League right now, is that there is money being put into the bubble scene, but not enough to make it so that we do have these next prospects being fueled and being given the ability to keep going until they make it to a pro level.
It's basically only 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds. That's why we see so many young pros, because they actually have the time. They don't have any bills to pay, but as soon as you turn, 18 to 21 or something like that, you're going to have to start focusing on being able to pay bills, or at least getting experience in a certain business area, and not just say, oh yeah, I earn $200 a month playing video games. It's great, but it doesn't really pay the bills.
Yeah, unfortunately so. And again, this is sort of why we mentioned that this really does need to have some more attention on it, because I think you and I can both agree we'd like to see the best for Rocket League. We want the most success for this sport, for this esport as we can, and the way that works is by making sure that a bubble scene is properly propped up. I think that you and I are grateful and blessed to be able to work in the bubble scene enough that we are actually making some decent money from this, and we're actually starting to see financial support. But I know that there are a lot of other people in the bubble scene that do not get the same sort of opportunities as you and I do, and I think that that's something we need to be aware of. And I think it's a duty to us, a duty to every one of you that is watching right now, to make sure to push and encourage these guys in the bubble scene as much as you can, whether that be monetarily, watching their streams, something to just give them the ability to make their dreams a reality. And I do think that actually kind of does lead me into at least one more point. I don't want to necessarily spend all day on North America, because we do have to talk about some of the... we have a lot to talk about in EU in terms of transfers. But one more person I want to bring up right now, because this has been on my mind for... I can't even mention how long. Where the hell is Wonder Mike going? We haven't heard anything from him in months. He got dropped off of EU months ago, and while rumors flew everywhere that he was going to find a team during the offseason, I don't even know if we have rumors on shift right now about him. I haven't heard anything about where on earth Wonder Mike might be ending up.
I don't think so either. I think I saw him try out with a few rosters, but he's one of those content creators in Rocket League that have actually got a good view in and should probably be able to go full time in that. So maybe that's what he's just doing. Maybe he's just going towards a little bit more content creation because let's be realistic. Even for a player like Wonder Mike, who is probably able to play in a top 20 team in North America, maybe even top 10, there's much more money in streaming, and it's just more likely to be happening. I wouldn't blame him whatsoever.
I mean, if he does it, I get it. The only reason I say that is because I know that he has actively been looking for a team, as my alarm yells at me. Sorry if you guys heard that. But he has been looking for a team for the most part. I know that he still has, like, mentioned that he does want to play for a team. And I think that's kind of the thing, is that as much as a lot of these guys could transition into content creation, and I think for Wonder Mike specifically, he's got very good content. I think he's an engaging human being, and he would do great in content creation. I don't know if that's what he's looking for. I think that at the end of the day, a lot of these guys do have that competitive drive. They want to see the greatest reaches of their abilities and see, what they can do there. And I think Wonder Mike is one of those guys. In my opinion, I think Wonder Mike is a dude that, like, when he's on, Wonder Mike is one of the better players in North America, which is why it's such a shame to not see him with a team, because I truly do believe that he should be on a team. I don't think there's no two ways about it. He really should be on a team, it's a shame we haven't found one yet, and it continues to make me wonder where the hell he's going. I mean, listen, I'll put it this way. I didn't think Percy was going to XSET in any way, shape, or form. And the reason I say that is because of the fact that we're fortunate enough, both you and I are involved in the bubble scene enough. We have friends and people we know that are, they're in the bubble scene. So all the rumors I was hearing behind the scenes was that Percy was trying out with Rogue, and that Rogue was looking at Percy. So when Rogue didn't pick up Percy, and they still have all three of their players, I'm starting to wonder, I don't think Wonder Mike's going there, but I'm starting to wonder, is Rogue even going to actually make that move that has been rumored for 3 to 4 months now?
But G2 also haven't confirmed Breeze yet, so there's still a lot up in the air in North America. Honestly, I think North America, they're so much more secretive with what's going on with their roster moves than EU. If you look at Wikipedia, look at rumors and transfers, there's an entire list of EU, and then sometimes sprinkled in there a little bit is an NA roster move, and usually it's bubble. So I don't know what the difference in that is. Maybe there's just more money, so they actually are more protective. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever.
I really don't know. Before we end up going into EU, because we do have a lot to talk about EU, I do want to reiterate real quickly the DreamHack winners, because I'm realizing that while the DreamHack event is not completely done, we do have a couple of people we want to shout out real quick. First off, for the 1v1s in North America, shout out to AJ for beating Lion Blaze in the grand finals to take that entire thing. Young Evo took third, Adverse taking fourth. Familiar names all around, all 1v1 players that you really should be familiar with, but AJ, shout out to you for taking that 1v1 competition. The freestyle was won by TX. Faith and MacTuff took second and third. Sesh took fourth. I mean, it's one of these things where you look at it, TX, not a person I'm familiar with, but when you're beating competitions like Faith and MacTuff, I know that you're going to have to be a good freestyler, so congratulations to you. Look at the 2v2 competition, in which I believe Pineapple won, which was First Killer and someone else, right? First Killer and AJ took the first place for that 200, or for the 2v2 competition in North America, and then the 3v3 competition in North America, I don't think has happened yet. No, I think for EU and NA, they've only done 2v2, 1v1, and freestyle so far.
That's tomorrow, the 3v3. So
if you're watching it live.
Yeah, you could hop over there right now if you are watching. And the 3v3 EU is going on right this moment. I think that's a proper switching point to go to EU, because I want to talk about Sandrock directly. Obviously, Senzo retired, and it was a little bit sad. I think in his statement he said that he is dragging his team down because he didn't really have the proper motivation. And well, there's a lot of rumors going around with who is going to be third in Sandrock. A lot of people say TRK, but now they're playing in the DreamHack tournament with Stealth, so maybe that's a potential third as well.
I mean, Stealth is a really good player. If they end up picking up Stealth, it would make a lot of sense. If I'm not mistaken, Stealth as a person in particular, he is a Middle Eastern player who moved to France, if I'm not mistaken, meaning that he does speak Arabic, which is going to be huge for these guys. I think it's a massive advantage for them to be able to have a player that they can communicate fluidly with, but also has a little bit better access in EU. I'm hoping that you're still around despite your camera dying here, Hyferia. We'll figure that out in a moment. But yeah, I think that stealth would be a really good addition there, just because it gives them an into EU. And it also does kind of give me some, I would say, relief to know that the Dignitas rumors we're hearing are starting to become a little bit more true, as they are not picking up a Middle Eastern third. They were talking about moving Ahmed or Khalid to EU in order to fill him in on the team. And I think it's a great idea. I don't know about taking an individual Middle Eastern player and putting them in EU versus taking a Middle Eastern team and putting them in EU, similar to how True Neutral took a South American team and put it in NA. I think that that's a better idea, just because there's more cohesion to the team, you know?
Yeah, otherwise that one player is going to have a very difficult time, I reckon, to adjust as well, to all of a sudden adjust to being able for one, in a completely new culture, in a completely new country, with people that he doesn't know, with a language that he doesn't really speak. So that's why I do think that a team is also better. And there's been rumors, I think, as well, with I think a Nigerian player going to be on one of the teams recently. I'm not too sure which team it exactly was. Something in my mind says it's Team Queso, or that the new team of Team Queso at least won't be Spanish.
Yeah, new Team Queso is really an up-in-the-air thing. If you guys do not know, Team Queso has officially dropped their roster, and while the players on the team haven't necessarily announced that they are going other directions, it still kind of feels like we're having I'd say some weird in-betweens with these guys, to put it simply. It doesn't really feel like we know what's going on with Team Queso or this new team, this quote-unquote Team Queso, because they haven't been very public about most of the things that they have said. That being said, I'm hoping they do stick together and they continue to play well as a squad, because I think that this Team Queso team, or this trio that was Team Queso, is a really, really good trio that should not be stopping their run here. I don't think that I see any value in that happening, you know?
They're kind of the weirdest team in the entirety of EU, because you can look at them and think they're absolute garbage, and then a minute later you can be looking at them and think, how did they ever get this good? It's such a weird team in that regard, and that's, I don't know, it kind of has a place in my heart. But Team Queso, a very big Clash Royale org as well, so they are ventured in different esports, and I do think that their next team is going to be phenomenal. I think a lot of people were hinting at Virtuoso being on the new Team Queso.
Virtuoso would be an interesting one. I think for me, unfortunately, with Virtuoso, is that Virtuoso is one of these guys, he does well on teams where he can kind of be that role player a little bit. I don't see a lot of value him on Team Queso, a team that's a little bit more energetic, a little bit more sporadic. I don't think that there is necessarily as much value in him being on that team versus him being on a team like Endpoint, where he is right now, where he's got a little bit more fitting ability there. I don't know what the right word is here, but you know what I mean. Like, his ability to fit in on that roster, I feel like, is a little bit more solid than the roster that he would be moving on to for Team Queso, or what quote-unquote former Team Queso. I think they're going by Magnifico now. Is that what their official name is? Because they are participating in a Community Open coming up, which we'll speak about in just a moment. If you guys don't know what the Community Open is, it's another 5K that BS Plus Competition is throwing in core, is it partnership? Yeah, partnership with the Coliseum. They are doing another 5K where Hyferia and I have the pleasure of being on that one as well, because that's actually, real quick, we should probably mention that there have been a bunch of competitions in EU lately that we should just run through real quickly. First one being the BS Plus Competition Invitational. That happened just about 2 or 3 weeks ago at the beginning of of July. German Amigos took that entire thing versus the competitions like White Demons, Sandrock, Rick's GG, and then BS Plus competition itself, obviously. They take 5K by themselves home. Then also we've got the next one coming up as well. We've got the Community Open, which is going to be, like we said, hosted by BS Plus competitions partner in the Coliseum, who are going to be doing another 5K, which I listen, I don't want to speak for the both of us, but to see smaller tournaments like this actually start getting thrown at the bubble and lower RLCS team in EU, I'm very happy to see this, because we did not have a lot of this for a very long time.
Yeah, it makes it more sustainable. The funny thing, though, with the Community Open, currently there are 6 teams announced, and only 2 of them have a complete roster. So there's Sandrock Gaming, who are missing one, Endpoint, who have got a complete roster, Team Liquid, who've only got Ronicky, Guild, Devo, and Noli, Rix, who've got Mike Boy and Ursulan, and are missing third, and Magnifico are obviously the old Team K, so who are still sticking together. So there's only 2 teams that have been confirmed, and only 1 team that still has the same roster as previous RLCS season, because Psycho is also new to Endpoint.
Yeah, we've got a lot of new, just new teams in general, and I think that's what makes this so entertaining to see these smaller tournaments start popping up now, is that we're starting to see what these teams are really made of. I think that we're starting to see really which teams are going to be a threat in their leagues in the next year. I think the biggest one to mention, I'm going to reiterate, I know we've moved back to EU now, but again, NA, people have got to be paying attention to True Neutral. If they are not paying attention to True Neutral at this point, that is their fault. I blame you for that, because it really is one of these things where they've done so well in all of the competition they've played in so far against genuinely good teams, and they have made it clear that they're waiting for a big dog to fight them so that they can show what they're made of yet again, you know?
Yeah, I really want to see the extra regions doing incredibly well. Yep. Once again, going into the same exact what I said at the start of this recording as well, is the more regions means more players, means more money for everybody in Rocket League. Rocket League right now is in a state where we just need to lift everyone up and not trying to tear people down to get $10 extra, because if you have more people, that $10 will be nothing in the end. Well, talking about new business, I think one of the biggest new entries in Rocket League right now is Carmine Corp with Seikitachi and Astral.
Yeah, that's a big organization to be entering into Rocket League, and it's a big pickup for Astral. I'll be 100% here. It's a guy that had been good on a multitude of different teams recently, but hadn't really found his space. To see him on a team like this could actually, I hate using the word could do some damage, because Reddit has ruined that. That stupid subreddit has ruined it. But
do some damage.
It really is one of these things where they could do some real damage. And again, it's not, also, I don't want to say, a shout out to RL Esports subreddit is actually a pretty good subreddit. I genuinely do browse it pretty often. But it's more one of these things where Seikitachi and Astral as a 3-man duo on Carmine Corp. How do you pronounce it, by the way? You're a European. You get to say this better than I do.
Oh, yeah, because I'm European. I love the French as well. I've got a great French pronunciation.
It's closer than I am, man.
I probably not, mate. Probably not. I think Carmine Corp, or just forget the
Carmine
last letter, is
Corp?
usually great in French. I don't know. I have my doubts about this roster, purely because Astral by himself is a great player, but then usually in team form, he just slacks a little bit too much.
He's had a couple of different rosters where he hasn't necessarily been able to pull them up the whole way. His last 2 are probably the best examples of that. Solary and Oxygen, he just couldn't really seem to make those rosters work, thus the reason that they were both pretty short stints for both of them. Or actually, Oxygen stayed around for a long time. Oxygen, I think, just had a lot of roster moves in that time, considering what had happened. I'm not even going to be able to look at that, considering Oxygen is now NA, so this will make it all more confusing for me to try and figure out where that roster was. But yeah, I do agree with you. There's a lot of question marks upon this team, to put it simply. I mean, if you look at his previous results, though, just for Astral alone, the last big result he has was the European Championship, where they made 6th, which was it's congrats, you make the top 6, which is great. But again, Astral's one of those guys that people love to put at the very top of EU. And I think for a good reason, because he is a very good player, but his just results as a teammate don't necessarily back him up.
Let's keep in mind real quick that the championship only had 6 teams in it, so
Also
they basically
fair.
got last in it.
But they made it.
Obviously, good that they made it there. Yeah, that's a result in itself. But I don't know. I think it's a roster that, if they're on point, they will beat anyone.
Yeah.
But it will be more the case of getting to that state, because I don't know, I just have my doubts about it. Well, a team that I definitely do not have my doubts about, because Dutch Powerhouse coming through once again Oh, I'm incredibly glad that this is going to be a team.
Yeah.
So Oli and Violent Panda getting together and representing the Netherlands once again in EU Rocket League. They will do very well because they also got second in IWO.
Yeah, they're a great team. We'll talk about IWO to wrap up all of this before we head over to prospects, because I think that's going to be one of the biggest topics of this entire day. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is a team that people knew was possible for quite some time. Violet Panda had mentioned that he was done with Dignitas, he was moving on, and he was looking for another roster. To see him on an all-Dutch team, I think this is the move. I mean, the truth of the matter is that we've seen this before. Teams that seem to have communications which are all in their native language and that they are comfortable speaking upon seem to do the best because they flow better. Vitality is a great example of that. German Amigos is a great example of that. I mean, it's just one of these things where you look at people who are able to speak in their native language and they just have better communications. And again, it's no disrespect to anybody who is trying to use English as their second language, because most of you guys speak better English than I do. But it's more one of these things where at the end of the day, there is benefit to being able to speak in your native language and being able to give yourself the best chance possible to, feel comfortable when you're talking to your teammates.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Joris and apparently Jack still staying on the Dignitas roster. Let's talk about their third real quick, because obviously that's somewhat in the air. There's been a semi-confirmed, there's been a somewhat rumor. It's Scrub. It's currently as their third, who has been benched and falling off ever since he won the RLCS championship.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're going to have to take a second to speak about this because, I mean, listen, here's what makes this so crazy is if you look at Scrub Killer's Wikipedia, the last good result they show from him is RLCS Season 9 Europe. They don't even show any of the results from him from RLCS Season 10 because he's just... I hate to stand on my podium here and sort of just try and talk down to what is one of the, a good player in EU, but I think that Scrub Killer is past his prime. I think that Scrub Killer is not a bad player. I don't want to say that he is a poor player that does not deserve to, have an RLCS spot, but I think that Scrub Killer needs to severely be taken a step back, and people need to recognize him for what he is now, not what he was. Because Scrub Killer, when he won the World Championship, was one of the best players on Earth. But you go and look what he did everything after that, and it is an absolute, it's a crap fest of just everything. It's so incredibly bad to see what happened to him. He goes to Maus. Maus kicks him because he has contracts disputes with the team, which, again, we don't know the full details of the contract. It's just like, it's just...
Well, wasn't it that he was made to be streaming with a certain gear on stream,
yes,
and he didn't want to, so he just said, "Nah, I'm not going to do that."
That's
just
part of it.
Stupid.
That's part of it. It was also supposedly that he had to have a certain amount of hours per week that he had to stream, which he was not happy about as well. But overall, it's one of these things where you have a team like Maus Esports approaching you and being like, "Hey, we're willing to give you some money and we're willing to sign you." You kind of have to negotiate that contract and try and make it work, not just go a month into your contract. Bro, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's just, you literally, if you look at his time with Maus Esports, it is dated as February 1st, 2020 to March 18th, 2020. He didn't even last 2 months on Maus Esports. So he goes to Maus Esports, gets removed from Maus Esports because he can't seem to stay with Maus Esports. Immediately after that, he goes with a bubble team in girls, which doesn't really matter, but the next team that picks him up is going to be Guild Esports. Guild, a huge roster, picked up a lot of good players. Not only did they pick up a lot of good players, but they're signed as David Beckham's freaking team. Like, they have money. They are putting good money into Rocket League. They're putting good money into their players, and Scrub can't even last more than 4 months there. He starts 2020, July 23rd. He leaves November 7th, 2020 as well. Supposedly, it was due to poor results. Guild was not happy with the fact that Scrub was not performing there, so Scrub gets dropped from Guild Esports. That is Team 2 that he's been dropped from since he had won the World Championship. And let's get to Team number 3, Singularity. Singularity, another huge name in Rocket League. But Singularity went from a team that was dominating in Rocket League to they didn't even make the last regional. And that's no thanks to Scrub whatsoever. He got benched. He's the sub for that team now. So just to sort of wrap up this entire arc of what happened to Scrub, Season 7 World Championship, Season 7 World Championship, benched on a team that didn't make RLCS. You see how that doesn't correlate to you're still one of the best players in EU? This is sort of where I have to kind of take a stand and be like, listen, guys, I get it. Scrub was one of the best. He is a huge following, but people need to stop overestimating how good he is and wait for the results to speak for himself, because he hasn't had a result speak for him in, I want to say, a year almost, basically.
Counterpoint, though, here's someone who's not had a similar arc, but also has been dropped in about 3 rosters until he's found pretty massive success. Rizix has been finding a massive success with the German Amigas, and you know, if Scrub now makes a comeback arc, that's just a way to get all the fans on his side once again. It's all just a marketing strategy, in my opinion.
I mean, listen, you're not 100% wrong there. I do think that there is a lot of value in making sure to pick up Scrub Killa. Dignitas has to be looking at this from partially a content creation standpoint, just because, I mean, listen, it is Scrub Killa. He is not a bad player, and he's one of the most popular Rocket League players on the planet. So even if your team doesn't do phenomenally, you're still going to have major content there, especially considering once Dignitas formed this roster, again, this is assuming that Dignitas forms this roster, they have 3 1v1 players on their team. All 3 of these guys are going to have ridiculous content over the next couple of months. And I mean, I also hate to say it, but I do feel like Dignitas has started to accept mediocrity from their rosters. Not necessarily saying that they're expecting them to be, like, you know, not good, but I'm just saying that old Dignitas was dominant in EU. New Dignitas is just middle of the pack RLCS, usually decently good in RLCS, and I think that they're starting to accept that as their reality more than, you know, top of the top.
I really hope not. I really want to see Dignitas power through, but just in general, this off-season, I've talked to so many bubble players who are grinding their mind out right now. They are just completely numb playing Rocket League the entire day and making sure that they get the best they can be for the upcoming RLCS season. And I think we're going to see a lot of changes, a lot of new powers coming through, and I'm incredibly excited for that. For example, just 2 regional things that I want to mention that have been grinding a lot. Team Deza, a Dutch team, Kaiser, Marmone, and Scheisse. They have been grinding a decent amount, and they're popping in there. I think they got top 4 in IWO. They're a very good Dutch team. And then a very important one, because this is a Russian team. First off, basically, and that is Smarasis. It's an Austrian org, but it's a Russian roster who's not currently filled up. Well, they are hopefully going to fill it up with a completely Russian roster, and that's more representation once again.
I'd love to see a Russian roster. I think that Russia's starting to get a really good community when it comes to Rocket League in general, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, it really should. It's a massive country with a lot of people in it that can absolutely play Rocket League very well. So hopefully we start to see some more Russian representation. But we're going to take a second before we get too far into that, because we've got a prospects section coming up. First, let's just go over at least a couple of the tournaments that we did see in EU or that are coming up in EU soon. Obviously, we mentioned the BS Plus competition, one that had come up a little while ago. Again, congrats to German Amigos. If you guys want to see more from BS Plus competition, go check out the community open. You're absolutely going to want to see all the teams that are invited there, because well, you and I know the full list of teams being invited. The public does not, and I can tell you the hits are going to keep coming, so you're going to want to keep watching out on that one. Another thing we do want to look at, though, is going to be the NA Cup. NA Cup was basically just a it was hosted by Nawis. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm hoping that's how you pronounce it. Fingers crossed. It was a Middle Eastern showcase, basically. They invited 8 teams invited 4 teams, had 4 teams qualify for the Middle East, and at the end of it, Sandrock came out on top. Big surprise. Falcons take seconds. Also big surprise. And Empty takes third. Ultimate takes fourth. Pretty much what you would expect when you look at this, but still, good to see some more representation in the Middle Eastern region and giving these guys a chance to compete for some money.
Yeah, I love that. In region as well, not some EU team and it's coming in there and dominate. Sandrock, they have been the best Middle Eastern team for a very long time, but now they need to prove themselves in an EU scale. And well, I think the BS Open is at the start of that, where they can try and prove themselves. Because I think every single time they do get dropped out of the tournament, people just start trashing on them.
Yeah.
Because they're getting a lot of eyes on them. And I just think it's a little bit ridiculous. Like, if they're a phenomenal team from a different roster, sure, they might be overhyped, but ultimately that's going to precede the entire Rocket League scene. So just leave them be and leave them in the hype. If that gets new players, perfect.
I think the biggest thing here is that Johnny Boy really did both a disservice and also a service to this team when he called Khaled the best 1v1 player of all time. It's very hard to call someone the best 1v1 player and then also try and like go into a 3v3 setting. I mean, it just kind of sets them up for over expectations at a certain point, which is a bummer. But that being said, I agree with you. I think that Khaled and the rest of the team just do have a really bright future, and I hope that they get a chance to play in a LAN somewhere where they don't have ping disadvantage, because people still seem to forget every competition they play in has ping disadvantage, which again is not make or break for everybody, but it can come down to some rather unpleasant opportunities going awry. You know, smaller touches that you would like to be a little bit more precise do not go as precise as you were hoping for. So it's a shame, but that being said, Sandrock will have more chances to compete in the future. I don't think this is the end of them in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to hope that we see them pop up in a couple of things later on. That being said, we do have a couple more things to speak about in EU before we go into the prospect section, where we'll talk about some of the people we think are going to be huge in this upcoming season. I want to mention the G2 Euro Cup, because we're going to mention IWO in just a second, but the G2 Euro Cup was another international competition where they invited a bunch of teams from countries that basically, you know, all the same regions. France, Germany, Spain, England, Netherlands, Switzerland, Italy, and Wales were the 8 teams invited. Germany came out on top. Germany's roster was Tox, Rizix, and Catalysm, which, if I'm not mistaken, is that German Amigos? That is German Amigos, correct? No, that's
Ivan is in German Amigos.
That is
Tox is in
SK. That's what it is. Thank you. It's SK Gaming. So yeah, German Amigos plus SK Gaming basically took that entire thing. England taking second with apparently Jack Hibbs and Inkso, which is not a team. It's just 3 English players. And then France took third with Sizen, Prime, and Redosin, which was, you know, I think the G2 Euro Cup was a cool idea. Maybe a little bit too last minute, because they probably could have gotten some, I'm not going to say stronger teams, but some better known trios, you know?
Yeah, it's always a little bit odd, but as long as you have a good event, G2, I think it was put together very well, and it was a good broadcast. Just I'm not too sure who the casters were, but I think it was a very laid-back stream, and I think that's something that's very important in Rocket League. Everybody's like very serious. We need some more for fun competitions that actually have a lot of eyes on them. Just memeing about, maybe roasting the players a little bit without getting in too much trouble. That also happened at some point, but you know what? I think in general, you just need to make a audience as wide as possible, and that you do with having different commentary styles.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things, is making sure to give diversity to the Rocket League scene. I would agree with you. I think that you and I both know which example is probably not the best example over the last month. We're not going to speak too much upon it, because I think the man has already faced enough ridicule and has apologized enough, and I think he really has meant his apologies. So we won't talk about that too much. The last thing we will talk about when it comes to EU is I do want to mention that there is a bigger competition coming up soon for EU. Samsung Odyssey League. Samsung has decided to put 25,000 euros into a league for EU. That starts at the very end of August. I want to say August 30th or so. I'm excited to see what comes out of this. I think this is going to be a huge preview to a lot of the competition we're going to see in RLCS. A lot of teams that would be competing in RLCS are going to compete in this as well. And I think this will be a great preview to some of the rosters that you and I have talked about today that might be forming.
Yep. I do think so. It is once again a nation league, but it runs at the same time as DreamHack. I don't know how they both got sponsored by Psyonix, and Psyonix didn't just nudge them real quick, like, yo, your tournaments are at the same day, and it's going to attract the same players, so maybe don't do that. I don't know. It's whatever. A lot of the bubble teams, they have just signed up for both and played the first round of one, got knocked out to lowers, and decided to play the other. That's what I heard a lot. Yeah, but there are some very interesting teams in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good teams that are going to be playing in the Samsung Odyssey League. If you guys want to check out more of that, I would highly recommend doing your research yourself, because unfortunately, I think if we were to go through every single team, it might take us a little while to compare them all, especially considering that they're still signing up to this day. But one thing that has concluded that we can speak about, and we're not going to speak too long about this, is going to be IWO. The Intel World Open has officially ended. We'll go over the 4 winners just overall, and then we'll speak a little bit more about that. For Americas overall, it was the United States taking the win. Garrett G, Chicago, and First Killer took the win over Squishy Muffins, J-Naps, and Illusion. That's who took second place. Third went to Brazil. Fourth went to Mexico. Brazil's roster was Astromic, Snips, and Yanin. Oh my God, I really one day want to be better at pronouncing South American players' names. I apologize for doing that. And then Mexico took fourth with Sebs, Ness, and Coquita. All three really good players. I've recognized all of them. Pretty much everybody that was in this competition I recognized. When you look at Europe, which was, I think it was Europe, Middle East, and Asia was the official name for this one. The winner was France, which was basically just the Vitality roster. Vitality basically took the entire thing. Netherlands took second with Mike Boy, Though, and Oli, which I know you're probably extremely excited about. United Kingdom taking third with Devo, Ollie, and Archie, and then fourth going to Norway. Those were the bigger competitions, I want to say, for IWO, not to disrespect Asia Mainland or Asia Maritime and Oceania, but those felt like the closest competitions. Asia, let's see. Asia Mainland, the team that took the entire thing was Japan, which is Realize, Maru, and Tenhao. A lot of people know who Realize is, and they really should because he's a phenomenal player. And then when you look at Asia Maritime and Oceania, big surprise here, not really, Australia took the entire thing. Australia been a very dominant team in the Oceania region for quite some time, and considering the team that it was in Amphis, Express, and Torsos, that really shouldn't be that surprising if you've been watching anything in OCE.
Yeah, also basically ground zero. Just a full entire squad that was already top of the region before there were any roster restrictions and country restrictions, and now they are confirmed the best in the region, also just in Australia and Co itself. Not a big surprise there. Not a big surprise whatsoever, but it's just... They deserve it very much, and I do want to see those regions be incorporated into a LAN, something that hasn't been happening. The production, though, of that IWO was in Poland, I'm pretty sure. A lot of casters got flown out. That already gave a completely different vibe to the entire production, and I absolutely love that.
I love the production. I love what they ended up doing when it came to how they made the commentators feel, how they made the action feel. But I'll tell you this much. Aside from production, the competition was rather spotty. The seeding made not a lot of sense. The group stages did not make a lot of sense. And you heard this from the players. If you guys had been on Twitter or pretty much anywhere where the players were speaking upon, and even the fans were speaking upon the last month, IWO's organization was definitely not standard, I would say, for what we were looking for a competition of this size. And that's not to say that we dislike the competition. At least I don't want to speak for you as well, but for myself, I don't want to say that I disliked what IWO was doing here. Just felt like it probably could have been run a little bit more smooth at the end of the day.
Yeah, I just think as soon as you have the three bottom seeds, and obviously they're still phenomenal teams, in one group together, it's not going to make great things. It's not going to make great content because the group stage will be rather boring. The chance of an upset, sure, a team will get through the playoff, but then get absolutely clapped instantly as soon as they make it in there. So I would have loved to see at least a little bit of seeding, not even very specific, but just say top four is this, bottom four is this. We're gonna mumble jumble them up, so you could have 3, 4, 5, 6 in one group, and 1, 2, and the last 6 and 8, or 7 and 8. It doesn't really matter. I can't count. It doesn't matter. So some random aspect, I don't really care. I think it's great, but it was just a little bit. That does lead me to AW3 though, because they have been a team that have been on my radar and has been getting a bigger and bigger blip every single time my radar once again goes off, because they continue to prove themselves the entire time.
Yeah, and if you're wondering why we mention AW3, that is actually who represented Norway in their group. Norway taking fourth overall at IWO for that Europe, Middle East, and Asia category. And I think that's actually probably a pretty good point for us to move into our very next session. We'll move off of Europe and go into prospects, which is basically teams and players that we think are going to do well. And I think that Norway's team in AW3 is a really good place to start. Fireman, Jonas, Sieben, Inferno have been 3 good players for quite some time. I think most people at this point know Fireman Jonas just because he started to stir the pot a little bit once IWO did get underway, and his words were rather taken out of context, which is kind of unfortunate because he was made to look like a bully based off the tweet that he sent, and the way he phrased it seemed like a bully, but in no way, shape, or form was he trying to diss the South African players that they were talking about. He was more just saying, hey, listen, if you're going to put South African players on 200 ping against a professional team from Europe, this isn't fair. They shouldn't be playing at this point. It's just not going to, just either get them in person or don't do this because this just isn't fair to them for a competition.
Yeah, I think even Johnny Burr reacted to that and was
Yep.
like, "This is absolutely disgusting attitude." And I could see why people would think that, but it's also a little bit too sensitive. Also, the situation that we were talking about earlier, people are just overreacting a little bit too much, in my opinion. Sure, some of the things that were said can be taken out of context, and then it's terrible. But I don't really think that what he said was that bad. Either
No.
way, they are a phenomenal squad, and Fireman Jonas is very much at the core of that. I think he has been amazing. And well, I say Fireman Jonas at the core. I want to talk about their coach. I have heard nothing but good things about RU, and I would love to sit in one time with their team in a coaching session or something, because I want to know what that man does to get this team so incredibly up to date with all the pro scene.
Yeah, they're very on top of their thing. I think the big thing to mention is that AW3 have just been a good team overall for a very long time. They're a team that I'm hoping continue to just go up and up and up, but they haven't necessarily been able to pass that threshold of RLCS and really be able to make a good run yet. So maybe this is the start. Giving them something like this, giving them a coach that's extremely involved is just I think that there should be, a good upside to this team. I think there's a lot to be, looking at the team for. That being said, I think there are probably a couple other teams to look out for in EU. I'm not necessarily going to speak too far upon this because I think that you're going to have a little bit more insight to the bubble scene in EU, but it does feel like there's some, not smaller teams, but there's some players that are finally starting to break into the pro scene right now that are most likely going to be taking the scene by storm.
Yeah, that directly leads me to my next team that I would love to mention, as I thought somebody was entering my room. Magnolia. Magnolia are obviously no names right now, as in the team is a no name because they haven't really been participating that much. But it is Joyo, Vatira, and Rise. All very, very young players at the same time. I think Rise might actually be the oldest one, because Joyo is a 15, Vatira 15, Rise 16. So they have a squad that is the oldest player is 16, and they're competing in top level competitions. They are going to go a very, very long way.
I mean, to be fair, these are guys who have had experience in RLCS before. Joyo used to play for Howard, a team that you and I actually had the pleasure of casting for the Grid in EU, and we got to see his experience firsthand. Absolutely insane. Another player that did similar things is going to be Vatira, who we've seen play in some smaller competitions around every once in a while. He ended up winning the RCX ESAA monthly about, I want to say, a month and a half ago or something like that. I got the pleasure of casting the finals for that and got to see him do that with his Skimbobulators firsthand. And then you look at Rise, and, well, Rise has been around longer than Rocket League, to be honest, at this point. It's just one of these things where he's been around for quite some time as a bubble player, but never really got his shot in the RLCS scene. Obviously, he made regionals back in fall when he was just 15, but now he's starting to find a real team. Now he's starting to find a really good competition, and I actually do think that, again, hate to use the phrase this team could do some damage, but Magnolia really does look like a team that could be a huge threat in EU if they can get past their age and the youth that they have and what could be some conflicts with immaturity. Again, I don't want to say that they're immature, but it is a trend we do see in Rocket League a lot where the younger players don't seem to keep their mentality as cool as some of the more veteran players.
Yeah, I think immature is very much a term for how they behave off the field and everything like that. But it's inexperience to deal with losses and everything like that and be able to move on to the next game without thinking too much about the previous one. That is why you usually see those teams of, let's say, Violent Panda, apparently Jack and Dorias, where you have one incredibly experienced player who's very much there for the mindset and being able to keep a positive attitude the entire time, even though they might be getting absolutely messed up. With a very young squad like this, where the oldest one is 16, I could see problems with that, but obviously, yeah, we have seen them play before, and that already seemed to be there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up qualifying for the Community Open as well. We might just see them there again.
It'd be a great place to see what they can do. I think they'll probably also play in the Samsung Odyssey League as well, or at least I'd hope that they end up playing in that. I'm not exactly sure where they're going to end up playing, but I'd like to see them play in as many competitions as possible, because I think for this roster, they really could be a threat in the upcoming season, and the more practice they can get in now, the more time and experience they can can get with the three of them as a roster, the better, because it'll just benefit them in the end. But that being said, I do think that, Magnolia and a couple other EU teams are going to be really good, but I'm really looking at NA when it comes to bubble teams that are about to pop off. I think that there's a lot of bubble teams in North America right now that are just about on the edge of making it there. The first one I'm going to speak about is a player that I have been highlighting for more months than I can freaking count at this point. Zenil has found a roster. And it's a freaking good one at that. It is Karma and Heck. And if you're not familiar with who Heck and Karma are, you really should be. Karma's possibly the best female player Rocket League has ever seen. Heck is probably one of the best bubble players I've seen in the last couple of months, as he has been rival series player, has done a ton of stuff for his team to get them to an RLCS event. And Zenil is probably the hottest player in Rocket League right now when it comes to North America, at least in my opinion. When it comes to just potential, he has been... I know that there's Daniel, I know that there's Poyo, I know there's Aqua, there's a lot of really good young players, but Zenil I don't know, man. Something about going from B to A in like 2 months has got me really hyped for this kid.
I'm incredibly excited for him as well. He's just a nice human overall, which instantly makes me wish him the absolute best the entire time. Another team that could do a lot of damage here to once again use it is Vibrance. Astro, Oath, and Fifi. Wow. They got together very recently, July 24th, so about 6 days ago as of the recording. It will be very interesting to see. Actually, Oath joined July 4th and Fifi joined July 24th. All phenomenal individual players. I really would love to see if they can actually get a cohesion going.
Yeah, I think Vibrance is a team that, we've been looking at because we've had the pleasure of doing a lot of bubble scene events recently, and the truth of the matter is that it's clear just by watching them how strong this team is, that they are very ready to take this. And I mean, it's a team full of players that have had good experience in the bubble scene before. Fifi's been around for a very long time. Astro has made rival series, and if I'm not mistaken, RLCS before as well. And I think Oath has done the same thing. Pretty much all of these guys have been around rival series, bubble scene, just barely RLCS. Yep. This could be the roster that takes them to that next level. That really does put them in the correct position to, make a deep run, to really be a threatening team. I'd love to see it. I wish the best for Vibrance as a roster, because I just think overall Vibrance is a cool team. They're really good players on the squad, and there's someone that all three of the players, I should say, are people that, the bubble scene has been waiting to see make it to that next level for such a long time.
Yeah, Vibrance, they could be very good, but also have constraints. Oath being able to make RLCS in a few times. And this next team, I will just leave completely up to you, because I already have a feeling that you know exactly what team I'm talking about.
Wait a minute. Which team are you talking about? Hold up. I've got 2 or 3 in my mind. The first one I'm thinking about is going to be some of the younger players starting to make rosters together. Are you talking about Aqua and Poyo's team, or are you talking about something else?
I'm talking about a team.
Oh, then no, I don't know who you're talking about.
Oh, come on. We've talked about them so many times the previous few days.
No, I'm not sure who you're speaking about.
Mirage?
Oh, okay. All right. Is this Mirage time? Is it time to talk about Mirage?
How many earnings past month?
God. Yeah, Mirage. All right, so we'll step on here and talk about Mirage again. I've already spoken about Mirage on the show before, but I'm happy to speak about them again. Mirage have earned, I want to say, $16,000 in a couple of months at this point. The team has been on an absolute tear. The reason I'm surprised to hear you talk about this is because Mirage actually has been in a little bit of a slump lately. Not to say that they have completely slumped, but they've been taking some up and down results within the last month or so.
They're in an upper bracket slump. Every single time, in a lot of tournaments I see them in, they drop out in the first 2 rounds against some squad that makes you think, who are they? And then they make an entire run through the lower bracket and either get still get top 3 in the entire tournament. So I don't know what happens there, but it at least very much needs some fixing, because you're not going to be able to go to the lower bracket every single time and still make it to a top 3 position.
I think the truth truth of the matter is that Mirage are starting to show more of a bubble scene version of them than they had before. Mirage was such a team that people had been hyped upon because they had consistently been taking good results, like, over and over again. You look at their run from April 18th until May, what is this? Let's go May 30th, basically just before June starts. Of that run, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 different first place results. They have more first place results than they have all the other results combined. They were just dominating for months on months on months. But then you go and look at their more recent stuff. And while I'm not going to say that they are not getting first places, because they have taken a couple of those, Nursery Gamer Monthly number 10, the Victory Series Showdown, Tactical Banditry, GameWorks Bandits on Wheels, which they're doing weekly. If you guys don't know about those, $300 every single week. They also took first place at another Tactical Banditry and GameWorks event. But then you've got this little bubble of between July 16th and July 28th, they took 4th, 4th, 12th, 4th, 3rd. They just couldn't seem to get past that little bit of a threshold. That being said, I do still think we need to put some eyes on Mirage. Mirage are a really good team, and if they can figure this out, they do feel like a squad that could do some really interesting things in the next season. But they also do kind of feel like just another bubble team now. Not to say that they are a bad bubble team, but they are starting to fit back into the categorically bubble squad. Because bubble teams, I feel like the big difference between them and RLCS is consistency and their ability to play at that top level in every event that they're in.
Yeah, I think they recently completed like a 7-win streak in Tactical Banditry and X Gameworks, and that's not in one tourney itself. No, that's 7 different weeklies that they have won in a row. It's absolutely ridiculous. To hop back over the pond with more roster mania. Wild is getting rid of their roster. Chippy and Justice getting dropped after Billy also leaving the roster. It's just another org that got into Rocket League and got out very quickly afterwards once again.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's one of these things where I feel like this is kind of unfortunately the trend right now for a lot of the teams in Rocket League is sort of trying to figure out how much money is actually there. And this is, again, why we sort of state that supporting the bubble scene is going to be huge for the longevity of Rocket League as a whole. But it really is one of these things where I think that teams need to try and stick it out in Rocket League a little bit longer. Another really good example of that is Pride Stark Empire. Pride Stark was around for, 6 months, 3 months, something like that, and then they dropped their roster because they weren't making necessarily incredible results. And I don't want to say that this is unfortunately the trend and the standard for Rocket League, but it is starting to become that. It is a team that is interested in getting into Rocket League, picks up a bubble team. That bubble team doesn't necessarily become the top of the top, and they go, well, there's no money here. We're not doing this. And it's an unfortunate result, which I'm hoping starts to change in the future, because without it, I don't see a huge, as bright of a future for Rocket League as a whole.
It goes right back to what we said earlier on the show as well, where it is important to have a thriving bubble scene where orgs can make just enough money to actually make it work. They don't even need to be making massive profits. It doesn't need to be that they can buy a mansion as soon as they pick up a team, but it needs to be that they can sustain themselves well enough to make it worth their while, and that's currently not really the environment. Sponsorships are still hard to be getting, and everything is still a little bit hard to be getting in there. So I would love to see that happen at a certain point, but I don't think we're there quite yet, unfortunately. That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. But the good thing is I think that you and I can both agree there's a lot of things going on in Rocket League in the next month. There's a lot of upside for these teams, and I'm hoping that starts to settle out everything that's going on here just a little bit more, because, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, we all want Rocket League to succeed, and for Rocket League to succeed, we need to make sure that everybody is getting treated fairly and that we are having, good results all around. I think one thing I'm going to definitely close up the show in just about a second. We're getting towards the latter half of this show and basically towards the end of it, but I do want to mention the players union that was proposed by Turn Turo. I think that's a really good idea. I think that it is very true that a lot of these players are getting taken advantage of because they are young and naive. When you have 15-year-olds being the cutoff for RLCS, and a lot of these guys literally getting picked up once they turn 15 because teams are looking at prospects, I think there should be some protection for these kids, because you never really know if you're 15 years old and a squad comes up to you and they go, hey, here's $1,500 a month to play for us, but you don't understand the terms of your contract. You don't understand that it's a stipulation. You only get $1,500 if you perform to a certain amount, so really you're getting paid $700, but if you make RLCS levels X and Y, you could earn either $1,200 or $1,500 or whatever. These sort of contracts aren't explained thoroughly enough to a lot of these kids, and I think that there needs to be some more protection for them, and Turo, I think, is making a very good proposal with what he has said.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, because you bungle money in front of people who can make esports their living, and they will jump at the chance without really thinking too much about, okay, but what actually and does this entail? What actually is going on? Then how will I be tied up in this? Will I be making money? Actually, it's just all very important. There's been some very, very shady contracts going around the bubble scene that managers just need to deal with properly. And this also, once again, goes into that there's just not really that much money in the esports. So as soon as there is money going around or potentially being distributed, everybody wants a chance at it. And, well, you sign a contract earlier if you think somebody else might take your spot.
Yep, exactly. It's a competitive scene, and I think that at a certain point it needs to be less about everybody fighting for each other, but it needs to be about having, everybody be propelled up. I like to say this a lot when it comes to casting, and I think I've spoken to you about this before, but it's not about having myself succeed. It's not about having just you succeed. That's the wrong way. Having just you succeed. It's about making sure that all of us casters succeed, because at the end of the day, when I eat, my friends eat. When my friends eat, their family eats. Like, it's about making sure that, everybody is rising up together, because it's not supposed to be a cutthroat competition where each one of us is trying to fight for the same sort of events and trying to steal from each other. It's about making sure that all of us have the opportunity to do what we love and to be compensated correctly for what we love. And I really don't have much else to say for that. So I think that'll be a great place to sort of wrap up this show and mention into the closing. I think that there really is enough emphasis upon what we have said at this moment, and I can agree with also Jay Base in the chat, who is mentioning that I think age restrictions and making sure to have a little bit more maturity in the scene is going to be able to help here. But at the end of the day, I'm just hoping that the scene can grow as a whole and that we can have more opportunities for everyone, regardless of age, from young to old, making sure that they can make money in Rocket League, make money in esports, and they have the ability to do so.
Yeah, making money in Rocket League obviously goes into playing tournaments, and the biggest tournament in Rocket League in its whole, run by the game developer itself, RLCS. The previous season obviously has ended, and RLCS 11 is in the works. It's being worked on. We don't have any inside info, unfortunately.
I've got rumors.
Yeah, exactly. We've got rumors. We've got inside rumors, apparently. So, when do you think it's starting?
Realistically, for me, I think we start at the beginning of beginning of September at the earliest, most likely end of September at that. I think the thing is that people are kind of going off of the last year, and the issue with the last year is that it was a little more up in the air, and it was COVID, and people didn't know what was going on. This year, there's a little bit more concrete ability. We actually have some time to actually respond, but also Psyonix isn't always that vocal about talking to the community, so I'm going to say middle September, realistically. I just don't actually know. The good thing is like we said, though, there's a lot of competitions that are going to be around that you guys should be checking out in the meantime. Again, I want to shout out to the Samsung Odyssey League once again. I'm hoping we have more episodes up before this, because I, again, want to make this a more weekly thing, but obviously to my computer breaking plus the time restrictions, it's been difficult. But hopefully we get another chance to speak about the Samsung Odyssey League before it does happen, but I think that's when you guys are going to want to check out. The Community Open for BES Plus competition that they are throwing with the Coliseum, again, have to shout that out, not only because of the fact that you and I are working on it, but also because of the fact that it's just a really cool competition with a lot of money and a lot of really good teams, so you're going to want to watch out for that. Trying to think of other stuff. USO has been doing a lot of leagues or a lot of events lately that I also do want to mention. I don't think we mentioned either of the events that they did, both the Fort Campbell and Fort Virginia events, which I think were won by a couple of different teams. I know one of them was Team Devious. Shout out to Team Devious, another bubble team that I think people should be paying attention to as well. But I think that's pretty much all the competitions I can think about aside from RLCS that are coming up. If you've got any others that I'm forgetting, please do let me know.
I just want RLCS to announce something in the next 2 weeks. Just something, a rough date. Even if it's, hey, we're going to be starting near the end of September. That is fine with me. Just so teams, players, managers, coaches, casters, the entire esport can prepare for it to be happening, because everybody wants a piece of it. Everybody wants to get it in there.
Yeah, just also, I mean, making sure to, like, the format at minimum would be nice. We don't know if we're having the grid. We don't know if we're having a normal league. We don't know if Rival Series is coming. We have no idea what is going on for the next format. So some sort of info would be great, because it just gives us a little bit more of an insight. Yeah, I agree again with the chat with J-Bay saying that we're trying to breathe here. At this point, we just want some sort of the ability to take a deep breath and know that everything's going okay and that we're going to be able to function in this next season, which is a lot easier said than done. I also did realize one other competition I do want to mention. Once again, Game Time Summer Throwdown. The Game Time Summer Circuit, also known as, is another thing that you and I have had the pleasure to cast on. I think that we're not on for the rest of the event, but I still want to shout them out anyways, because they've got 8 qualifiers. They've got 3 of them left, and then that $4,000 final with some really good teams from North America. So you guys are going to want to check that out. Want to check out the Samsung Odyssey League, and I think that's about it, Hyferia. I don't have any other leagues to recommend to these lovely people. If you've got anything else or any other closing remarks, I leave it to you, but this has been a phenomenal episode of the Rocket Recap.
Yeah, it's been a phenomenal one for sure. And the first one as well. So if you do have recommendations, please do leave it in the chat or wherever. Send us a DM. Just anything that we can improve on, anything that you'd love to see, because we're very open to feedback. Of course, we know that this is not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect when Bass is in the show. But hey, sometimes you got to make do.
Roasting me on my own channel. Wow, that's a bold way to end this one, but I appreciate it. Hyferia, it has been a pleasure casting you or talking with you here today. Hopefully we get you back in the booth and the ability to do this again next week or whenever we find some free time, because I know both you and I are extremely busy in the next month. But we'll see what happens. So, for myself, for Hyferia, for the Rocket Recap, this has been the episode number 3 for the week of 7/30, July 30th. A lot of stuff going on. Hopefully we have some more stuff when we come back to you next time, but we will see you in the next one